Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Helen Fitzhugh. I'll be speaking with you today. I'll give everyone a few moments to arrive and then we'll kick off. So just if you are in the session today and would like to, pop your a hello in the chat. Otherwise, in a minute or so, we'll get started. So we've got a few more people in now. That's great. Okay, so I'll make a start for all of those of you who are here at the start. Today I'm going to be talking about continuing to promote wellbeing in a crisis, what the latest research tells us about good practice. So it's always good to start these kind of talks with who I am and why I'm here, so that you know where the information I'm giving you comes from. So I'm what's called a knowledge exchange fellow at the University of East Anglia. That means that not only am I involved in the kind of normal things you would expect a researcher at a business school at UEA to be doing, I research workplace wellbeing. I also try to actively have conversations with people in businesses and other organisations about that research. So I intentionally say conversations because I do bring out the findings. I try and translate those findings for real life use, but I also like to listen to what's going on in other organisations too, bring that back to the business school so that our research is really grounded in what people need and are interested in. I'm also part of a collaboration with researchers across 8 different UK universities and the CIPD on a project called the Propel Hub. The Propel Hub has a website, propelhub.org, and you can check that out as well because we have a lot of information on there which is doing this exact same thing I'm talking about, knowledge exchange. So taking the kind of cutting edge research going on people, productivity, inclusivity, that kind of thing, and writing blogs, infographics, making videos about it so that people can learn from it directly. So if you are interested in anything like that, please do follow me on Twitter at Dr. Fitzhugh. You can contact me if there's anything you would like me to know about what's going on in your sector, and if you think I could help you think about research that would address it. So that's who I am. And it means that when I'm talking to you in a moment, I'm going to be drawing quite broad brushstrokes about workplace wellbeing. These you can rely on are all drawn from many years of workplace wellbeing research by a team of, well, probably about 8 to 12 people, depending on which year it's been, working on systematic reviews, qualitative research, and secondary analysis all about this topic. So I'm going to start with this, which is where I usually like to start most conversations about workplace wellbeing. This is what's come out of, as I say, years of work funded by the Economic and Social Research Council and collaboration with the What Works Centre for Wellbeing. We know quite a bit about how it's possible to improve workplace wellbeing, and we knew it before the pandemic. These are really important principles. Often when people think about workplace wellbeing, how they might get a quick fix on this kind of thing, the mind leaps to the kind of shiny, lovely things that Google or other big companies do for their employees. Things like, oh, you know, we're going to have bean bags, a yoga session, and you know, you'll all have this lovely development time. And other businesses and organisations say, well, you know what? We can't do that. We've got incredibly high workloads. We're pressed. You know, that workplace wellbeing isn't relevant to us. So I've got to push back against that and say, those are red herrings. That kind of coverage in the media of what workplace wellbeing is a complete red herring, because when we look at organisational research, we know it's actually you need to go back to the fundamentals, the basics. So wellbeing awareness promotion is part of it. You know, these days when you might have, oh, let's all go for a walk day, you know, heart health check day. These are important things, but they're superficial in a sense. As you go across this screen that I'm showing you now, things get deeper and more embedded in the organisation, and the more deeper and embedded you get with your approach, the more it actually affects people's genuine well-being within that organisation. So we've got the idea that you need to offer help if people are struggling. People might be struggling with physical, mental, financial problems. And if those people are struggling, it will be affecting not only their well-being, but also their performance at work. So there's a win-win in trying to address issues and help signpost people to the support they need. Then we've got, going deeper still, the importance of, just from the start, fostering good relationships at work. At work, we aren't machines. We are teams. We are people who work together, and good relationships underpin good performance as well. So while most people get meaning from their work through what they do and the people around them, recognizing that can be a really important way of, again, doing this win-win thing, making things better for the employees while making things better for performance and productivity too. Then this old chestnut, practicing good management. How many people amongst you have left a job because of a manager, not because of the job? Or had an experience where you've thought, you know what, this is a fantastic manager and I would love to stay and work for this person forever because they've got the skills to actually be able to manage me. So we're quite aware when we are being managed of who is doing well and who isn't doing well. And unfortunately, lots of people fall into management accidentally. You know, they are good at what they do, they're promoted, but they haven't necessarily got the people skills at that point to do that management. And if they aren't then trained up, supported by the organization to do it, how are they supposed to get that experience? You know, it's something that organizations need to look at as a whole and not just personalized to individual managers. And then finally, this idea of developing high quality jobs. This is the most embedded view of what workplace well-being is. This is the acknowledgement that people will be most affected by the conditions and the way they are recognized at work. So, you know, fair pay, civility, anything that happens with regard to training them up, prospects for promotion. These are all things that make a difference that you can tell are quite different from that very superficial view of if we can sort out well-being by implementing a few walking sessions at lunchtime, that kind of thing. And that's not doing down walking, because walking is excellent, but workplace well-being as a rounded concept includes so much more. There are lots of reasons, though, why people might not be doing this currently. And here are just a few of them. So obviously, people might not be doing the more embedded workplace well-being approaches because it takes time. And again, we know that people in many organizations are being pushed to do more and more work for the role that they do. So investing time in thinking about how we can make people-focused organizations isn't always easy for people. And it often comes down to visioning and planning. Does your organization actually want you to be people-focused? If it does, it will make time for it, and it will make sure that you get the training and support you need. If that's not part of the vision and the plan, it can easily go by the wayside. Also, there is a real need in workplace wellbeing to understand the workforce. What we see often is that when you have a really good, well-meaning person come in to run a new well-being program or a well-being initiative, and they have lots of ideas drawn from other places, and they can start implementing them and sometimes face resistance or low take-up. And often this is because that thing that they've taken from another context doesn't necessarily work with their workforce. This happens all the time when public sector people are asked to do things that have worked in various private sector organizations. So understanding the workforce is a key underpinning of all of that kind of work. Learning how to manage people with learning how to manage with a people focus we talked about already. And this is all contributing to changing organizational culture, which we all know takes time, persistence, and consistency. So you can't change organizational culture overnight, and often you can get set back if you don't do things which are consistent with the way you want it to change over time. So how does this all relate to promoting well-being in a crisis? Well, I'm adding in crisis issues here, and you can see some things are already falling off the edge of the slide, falling off the edge of the page, because when you're in crisis, those things that I've talked about become exacerbated. So investing time, what time? You know, we've been absolutely run off our feet during the pandemic. You know, that's a common thing to say. Visioning and planning, how can we do that while the future keeps changing and things are uncertain? Understanding the workforce when their needs keep changing and the pressures on them keep changing. And learning how to manage people is one thing, but how do you manage people who are under even greater stress when you're under stress yourself? So, and I've put changing organizational culture going out the window there on the end of the slide, because essentially crisis issues exacerbate all this. But I am here to say that actually it is possible for organisations to continue paying attention to well-being during a crisis. And I know this because of some research that we were fortunate enough to do right at the start of the pandemic. So this table, this illustration on my slide, says that we spoke to 96 informants from 14 different organisations for the first wave of research that we did. Originally, this research was going to be about how do organisations implement workplace wellbeing strategies. So it had nothing to do with crisis, had nothing to do with the pandemic. And the idea was we're going to visit the same organisations 3 times. Once right at the start to get a sense of what they're planning to do, where they're currently at in their workplace wellbeing journey. Once again, after 6 months or 8 months to see how things are going on. And then again later on, a year or a little bit longer than that later. And the idea behind this was most of the research that's currently done about workplace wellbeing is all about a snapshot in time. Here's a case study. This is what they're doing at this point in time. Whereas we were really interested in, okay, how does implementing this unfold? How does it happen in real life rather than in a textbook about culture change? So when the pandemic hit, we'd spoken to about half our informants already, and still were able to speak to half of them a month or 2 months after the start of the pandemic. So of course they had a huge amount of upheaval, but were able to tell us really interesting things about how their particular organisation had responded. So I'm going to go through now 3 pretty simple sounding things that came out of our research to see what was good practice when people were trying to maintain their focus on employee wellbeing during a crisis. It's a fairly short presentation I've got with you today, so I'm going to do the kind of high level statements from it, but there is an article about this on the Propel Hub website, which I told you about earlier, and I can post that in the chat at the end as well, the link to that sheet, the blog and the kind of information sheet. So there is a little bit more there, and we're going to bring out more information on this over time. As you can imagine, in academia you have to work through all the processes so that we can get this out in suitable reports and papers. But so you're getting a kind of early view of what we've found out about maintaining well-being in a crisis. So this first point here is about balancing consistency and flexibility. You can see on the image there, we've got consistency at one side of this balance, and that's the idea that the work on well-being in your organisation might be quite rules-driven. So policies, everyone getting a fair shot at the same resources you're giving them, or the same opportunities, say, for flexible working that you're giving each other. The other side is flexibility, and you can see that that is more values driven. So if we want to be this type of organisation, then what are our values saying we should do for this person? So it might be that they've got a very extreme problem. You value them as a worker and you want to make things happen for them. So you say, okay, well, our values say we've got to help whatever, even if we haven't really ever done this for someone before. Balancing these 2 things is really important for maintaining well-being during a crisis, because they serve 2 different purposes. So the benefit of the consistency is that you are ensuring fairness and equality, and justice at work is one of the big drivers of either job satisfaction or lack of satisfaction. If people feel things aren't fair, they will say, this is not a good place to work. So having that rules-driven element helps to ensure that equality. But what it does as well is it can risk depersonalisation of responses from an organisation, and it can risk, therefore, a lack of engagement with initiatives or approaches to wellbeing if they don't seem to chime with what people are actually experiencing in the moment. On the other side, flexibility is really great because it's responsive to change and employee need. But if it goes too far down the route of special cases, that's when the inequalities can slip back in. And also, we've seen so much in the pandemic about unconscious bias, that if you aren't being rules driven and consistent, maybe that unconscious bias can slip in all sorts of dangerous ways. So getting this balance is something that those organisations who were really seen as supporting their employees well did during the pandemic. The second point is they were providing different types of resources. So one of the controversies I saw online and on Twitter and that kind of thing during the pandemic, especially with regard to frontline workers and health workers, was are you putting the response, is the organisation putting the responsibility for being resilient and healthy onto the worker? Are you not taking responsibility for this at an organisational level? Is there something going on which means you're saying, okay, we'll give you all these individual resources so you can proactively manage your own well-being using these frameworks we're giving you, not acknowledging that the system and the workload actually is the thing that's causing the well-being problems. So offering individual resources can be really important and is a valid part of an overall approach to looking at well-being. Some people really value them and benefit from them. I was part of myself a study, this is pre-pandemic, but a study of mindfulness in policing. And there was a very important, significant and average improvement in job satisfaction and well-being for people who really learned to do their mindfulness training in policing. But that isn't the only thing. You can't solve everything with that individualized approach. It was a part of the puzzle, let's say. So what are the other parts of the puzzle? We've got relational resources. So that's where we acknowledge that people are at work in a social environment, and how people interact with each other makes a huge difference to how we feel, whether we feel supported, whether we feel we can carry on doing things that are hard and are tough for our resilience. Setting up, for instance, networks for general support, making sure line managers were doing check-ins with people, lunch groups for informal chat, mental health first aiders, making sure they called on people, and also really making sure there was some acknowledgement that there might need to be extra help for people with specific challenges exacerbated by the crisis. So childcare was one of these big things. So single parent, how is this affecting single parents, for example? One of our example organisations set up what they called tribe networks. So this was where people could just, if they wanted to, turn up for mutual support with people who are facing the same issues as those over Zoom. And those seemed to be very successful for that early lockdown period where everything was very intense, and then they fell away and other things replaced them. And then finally, we've got this idea of tangible resources. So this is, if a mental health first aider realises that you might need some support, have they actually got anywhere to forward you on to? It's really important that if they're doing that process of identifying people who might need help, you can't just stop there. A mental health first aider is only really for signposting and very informal chats. If you need counselling, if you need something more intense, those services need to be available at the end of that signposting process so that people can get the support they need. Otherwise, their confidence is lost in the whole system. And then we have, other resources in the workplace. Employee assistance programs can be helpful. and all sorts of professional support networks. Are they plugged in to help as well? So I think the key takeaway from that slide is basically, don't only think that it's about the individuals. Providing lots of different types of resources gives a rounded view of how you can maintain well-being in a crisis. Then on my third point, you have to make sure that these resources that you're offering are used. And this sounds like such a simple point. And I, sometimes occasionally at these kind of things, I have HR professionals saying to me, but I do that. And I'm like, excellent. I'm so glad that you do that because it's so important. But the thing that we learned from many organizations is that people provide things and don't always realize how much work it takes to get people to do uptake. You can't send one email. You can't say something once. That it involves a whole network of people creating the culture in which those resources feel safe to be used. If there's counselling available, do you feel safe enough to take up the offer of counselling, or do you actually feel that if you did that, you would suffer repercussions from your organisation? And again, the HR person might be absolutely horrified by that idea and say, of course there wouldn't be repercussions. But if the overall environment in which that person is working sets the tone that makes them fear that, there's work to do. So we've got here ideas of 3 different people who can be of use in setting that tone. One of them we're calling catalysts. So these tend to be your senior managers, and they can help instigate wellbeing changes across the organisation by driving the agenda. Their leadership is symbolic. If in one organisation during the pandemic, it was a very high-flying, hard-working organisation where people were really pressured to do a lot. And during the lockdown, one of their senior managers said, do what you need to do during this time to be okay. If it means you're not going to do your work as well, we're okay with that because we know it's in completely unusual times. And to have that person say that shocked many of their workers because they were like, well, we're used to being told to work really hard. So it seemed to be followed through with genuine, that managers weren't sort of picking up on any performance issues. They weren't sort of pressing for heavy deadlines even during that time. So it was followed through to the middle managers and the team managers as well. So authentically setting the tone and then having it happen within the organisation. Then you've got practitioners. Practitioners are, again, these people who bring expertise. So they might be human resources, occupational health, people with particular expertise on subject matters like inclusivity or inclusivity in particular. And they can help practically. So show the organisation the way. Say, okay, there's a crisis, I'm going to step up and think about how we can adapt what we already do. Make sure that people are aware, give them oversight, keep communicating about this in lots of different ways, not just via email, but in person or over video calls or events or whatever we need to do to get this through to people that we want to help. And then finally, this idea of agents. So these are people who spread the word. This can be formal. In some organisations, there are wellbeing champions, for instance, and they help disseminate the message. And if you've set that up before the crisis, then having those wellbeing champions can be a real help. But if you haven't, it's also about having people who are enthusiastic about spreading the word. So again, they can help practically if they are, for instance, the mental health first aiders, but they can also help symbolically that there are others in the organisation who think this is important and it's being kept on the agenda. So those are 3 ways that organisations made sure they could continue to promote wellbeing during a crisis. And here are some other little bits and bobs from the research as well that summarise what I've been talking about. So in adapting to shocks, it's important to have regular dialogue with the workforce and show authentic concern. So authentic concern is a really big thing here, because if it looks like a tick box exercise or something is offered, but patently can't be used by people. So a lunchtime session, but no shifts end at lunchtime. If it patently can't be used, it doesn't seem authentic. So really making sure that they have that conversation backwards and forwards, so that any of those issues can be ironed out before something is promoted and told to people. Understanding how adaptations fit with comprehensive coverage is really important. So again, this fairness point, are there no gaps? Are there people who are not getting your support and they need it? So let's check on that. Communicate. Communication, of course, being two-way. And make sure people are aware and able to raise new concerns when necessary. If nobody is coming to you with issues, it's because they don't feel able to. And so there is something to do, a piece of work to do there about understanding what the fear is, what people feel they might need permission to do, or if there's something that just isn't possible at the moment. You think everyone knows about the the wellbeing hotline, nobody knows about it, so making sure people are aware and able. So I'm just going to remind again of this last thing before I stop talking and take questions. Don't fall into the Spangled Trap. This is something I made up, but hopefully when I've said it to other people, it really chimed with them. So hopefully it will chime with you as well. The Spangled Trap is saying, let's do these occasional gifts or events or special things rather than building workplace wellbeing into the way the organisation operates. I saw two examples of this happening differently during the pandemic. I won't say which organisations they were, but one organisation where basically it was very hard to do anything about how tough people were feeling during that time because of their workload and because of the specifics of the pandemic. And they were sent out various gifts, various items, it was not well received because they felt it was this inauthentic approach. It was saying, okay, I don't need a pot of whatever this is. I actually need someone to help sort out the crisis that's happening, which means I can't do my job the way I would like to be able to do so. Contrast that to another organisation where they'd been doing a lot of work on workplace wellbeing for a long time. They'd got their systems in place where they trained every single manager in how to have difficult conversations with people about their mental health, about all sorts of things. And when the time came for the pandemic, what they did was go deep on having a lot of conversations, checking in, a lot of social contact, listening, trying to respond to people's concerns about furlough and all sorts of things. And then at the end of that, once they were sort of further down the line, they did give people, again, a small gift. And it was really, really well received, but it was well received because it was part of a wider package of having done that listening process. So just don't fall into the Spangled Trap. It can be quite a useful thought whenever you're thinking of something new to do in this area. So that's my talk for today. As I said, it's fairly high level because I'm drawing on from lots and lots of different sources of evidence. But here are two websites which contain information on lots of studies about workplace wellbeing. And in a moment, I will just add the link to the specific information sheet that I've been talking about into the chat as well. So I hope that was useful and interesting to you. I'd be really happy to take comments, questions, and see what comes up in the chat and in the Q&A. Well, I don't think anyone is asking any questions at the moment. Rachel, I just want to check with you, I haven't missed anything. Okay, that's fine. What I can do, as there's still a few people in the room, is I just wanted to highlight a different piece of work that I've been doing that launched yesterday, because it might be of interest to some of you. I've been part of a project called the Good Jobs Project, and it's mostly been focusing on sort of lower paid frontline workers in retail, hospitality and care. That piece of work was a listening process for both employers and employees about what happens in frontline work when people, face tough times. How can their working lives be improved? Um, and I think the findings are much more widely applicable than just in retail, hospitality and care, because what we had was 4 boosts for frontline workers, basically, which are around ways in which organisations can think about managing and supporting those workers. So if anyone is interested in those 4 boosts, that information is also on the Propel Hub at the moment, which is the same website there that I've put in. And it's also on my Twitter account and various other places. There's a short video under 2 minutes, so if you were interested, please do have a look, because I think it's something that, although it was about specifically those very sort of frontline roles, public facing roles in commercial businesses, it has got applicability in other settings as well. Okay, I think if that's it for questions, I'm happy to leave it there then.